Welcome to People Helping People, the podcast to help social entrepreneurs build a stronger business and have a greater impact. Today's episode is for anyone who's ever struggled to explain what you do without launching into a long-winded explanation, or anyone who knows that their work matters but feels like their messaging isn't landing. Our guest today is Brandy Walker, the founder of Brand-Worthy Solutions. Brandy helps mission-driven organizations and entrepreneurs own their story, amplify their voice, and build a brand that connects with the right supporters and customers. What I love about Brandy's approach is that it's not just branding for branding's sake. She comes from a deep background in nonprofit program development and fundraising, and she's seen how these kind of struggles translate firsthand into impact when people have clear messages. And I love Brandy's approach about, using clarity in order to really drive home messages. So let's dive in. Brandy, welcome on the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Adam.
Can we start off? Can you tell us a little bit about the story of Brand-Worthy Solutions?
Yeah, so Brand-Worthy Solutions came about because I found myself working in nonprofits. And if you work in nonprofits, you've probably done this where you're working a lot outside of your job title. And so I found myself having to explain to people how to tell better stories. When you're working in nonprofits, you're grant writing, you are fundraising, you're connecting with donors. If you're on the program side, then you're talking with clients, you're speaking with families, and you need to be able to tell a great story in order to get people on board, in order to further your programming, in order to get the dollars that you need, in order to keep the doors open. So Brand-Worthy Solutions came about through many years of working in nonprofits and me deciding that I was going to tackle this issue that continually came up.
Love it. How did you get into this sort of work?
Yeah, so I started my career as a teacher. And through teaching, I realized that a lot of young people, adults as well, really struggle with being able to articulate who they are. In addition to that, they are terrified of speaking about themselves. And so, as I got out of the classroom and started coaching adults who were teachers and started to do some life coaching, I started to really help people understand how their stories can impact and relate to other people. Then I started to help people build confidence in doing so, so they weren't so afraid to talk about themselves or felt like they had to sell themselves, so to speak.
What was your favorite thing about teaching?
I think my favorite thing was being able to expose students to things that they would not experience on their own, whether that was a piece of text or taking them outside the classroom on field trips or even having guest speakers come in to talk to them about what they did in the real world.
Love that kind of connecting young minds with new ideas.
Yeah.
Did you always think that you'd become an entrepreneur and build your own business?
I did not. I wanted to be a writer for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I read a lot. And then I read so many great stories. I thought to myself, this was probably third or fourth grade. Like, I would like to write a really great story that someone gets so caught up in. They're walking down the street reading their book like I was. And so I went to school with the intention of becoming a journalist. And then I got really into educational issues. And so I was majoring in English and I was minoring in education. And then I graduated college at the end of 2009, which was a recession year. If you were around, if you're as old as I am, and I couldn't find any journalism jobs. And so, because I had the educational background, I became a substitute teacher. And I started working with kids of all ages, K through 12, every day, a different grade, a different school, kind of doing that sort of thing. And so, entrepreneurship was not in the forefront of my mind, but both of my parents were entrepreneurs. My mom had a tax business, my dad was an artist. So it didn't seem like such a far off thought or idea. I just thought I would go to college, get this job, right, and sort of travel the world. And then, life happens and you start to see and think about things differently. And then, you follow the path that is ahead of you.
That's cool. And I just want to pick up on that because I think that's very unique to have two parents who are entrepreneurs. Have you noticed that impact you in other ways other than just starting your own business?
I think it has, growing up until my father passed away, having both parents at home all day was like the greatest thing ever. My friends at school would say, "Oh," my mom said, if I get sick, I have to stay at school because she can't leave work. Or, my parents always had flexibility and they would come to school and bring me lunch. They would, pick us up early some days and we would go to the park or a museum. Like they just, they were ever present. And I think that made made a huge impact in terms of I always knew that they were available, they were easily accessible, and I didn't have like any kind of restrictions or qualms about going to them at any time for anything because I knew that they were there. They built in that flexibility into their lifestyle. And so I always liked that. In fact, when I got my first teaching job and I had to be at work at 7 a.m. and I couldn't leave until 3, I thought this is terrible. These hours suck. Like I just have to be here in the same place. And my parents, they didn't do that. My mom would, she would take tax clients and she would go to their homes or they would come to her office or they would meet up for coffee or what have you. So she was not only was her schedule flexible, she had the ability to travel. And you realize when you get in a 9 to 5 job, that is not the case. It's you, desk, computer all day until lunchtime. Then you have a little break and then it's back to that.
I can relate to that. I worked for my dad's company for 15, 16 years and
Mm,
I missed that freedom. And so, now I'm in that phase where I'm branching out and building my own thing.
yeah.
I'm curious. So, okay, after teaching, you were coaching, you were helping people discover their voice. How did Brandworthy Solutions come about?
I've been doing the coaching thing for a while, and I was working with a couple different nonprofits, which led me to take on a program role. If you ever worked in programming, you know that you don't just, monitor the day to day. You're also a fundraiser. You're also, recruiting board members. You are counseling clients. At the time, as a youth nonprofit, so I was working with parents as well. You have to get kids enrolled in the program. I was reaching out to schools and getting schools on board for the program. So I was kind of doing all of the things. And I realized I didn't really like doing all the things. But the thing that I really found a lot of success in was fundraising. When it came to managing relationships with donors and board members, I had no issues there. I've never been afraid to ask for the things that I need. So, I was working with my development director at the time, and I would say, if we could get this amount of money to do this thing, then I think it would really elevate the programming. And they kept saying, well, I don't know anyone, or we'll look into it. I said, okay, I'm going to go to people that I know. I'm going to reach out to these organizations because I think it would be a perfect match, and they just can't tell me no. And so I started to lean more and more into the fundraising. I was doing the coaching at the time um, on the side. So, like relationship building, I had access to a lot of different people, a lot of high net worth people. I was working in the Bay Area at the time. So, I was constantly going out to events and networking and meeting people. And so, it just lended itself well to me kind of building a pipeline for my own program. And then, left out of that role and dove into fundraising kind of completely. I realized, hey, fundraising has a lot to do with storytelling and relationships. And it's not just about, the money. You have to do all these things on the back end. And so I was doing more and more of that work and thought, I would like to work with more diverse organizations. Started thinking back to my child. I would like to have more flexibility in my work. I would like, to have more freedom over my time. And so that's how I started to think about the organization where I could do the one, specialize in the one area that I really love, have the time, freedom, and flexibility that I really wanted, but also still be doing meaningful work.
How does storytelling kind of weave into fundraising?
Fundraising is storytelling, right? Like you are communicating an idea, a cause, a message to someone. And the best way to communicate that is through telling a story. I know a lot of people might tell you you need all of this data and the numbers matter, but really when you're connecting with people on a one-to-one basis, you need to be telling a story that they can understand, that speaks their language, that pierces their heart, and makes it clear to them how they can support.
So, fast forward today, can you share some examples of the clients that you work with and what that work actually looks like?
A lot of times when people come to me, they don't realize that they have a branding or storytelling problem. What they will say is, we've lost a significant amount of donors. We need to update our website or we need to get on social media more. Can you help us figure out what type of content to post? Or they'll say things like, well, my board members don't know what to say to people about our organization. And then I'll ask, and they say, we do so much. We do all of these things. And they just, they need frameworks. They need, help in how to explain this to people. The first thing that I do with all my clients is we do an audit. I go and look at all of the stuff that they're putting out into the world, all of the messaging. What do you have on social? What are you saying on your website? What are you communicating? Sometimes it's an internal communication problem in that Some organizations have so many departments or programs that everyone is kind of telling a different story or saying a different thing, and no one can quote the mission, right? So you're going around trying to figure out what the actual problem is. I've worked with organizations that are on the smaller side where they have small teams. Maybe it's just the executive director and two full-time employees. I work a lot with youth-led organizations, but I recently worked with an organization that hosts improv workshops for adults. I've worked with organizations that are healthcare based. So it really varies, but typically they're coming with the problem, or I should say, they're coming with the symptom of a problem that we later try to figure out what the problem is. So we go through an audit and figure out what are you saying and where the disconnect actually is, because sometimes they don't know. Yeah.
I'm curious because I sometimes I feel like storytelling in any organization gets labeled as being somewhat vague
Hmm.
or like, hey, how do we actually tie this to revenue? How do you measure success when you do a project with a customer?
Yeah. So I think it depends on what their goals are. A lot of times they are saying we need to increase our funding or we need to have a wider reach. And so we sit down and we go over with them what metrics will actually make sense for that goal. Like it would, having a certain number of followers on your LinkedIn page really matter and make a difference? Or are you more interested in conversions? Not how many people are visiting your donation page, but based on that story that you posted on LinkedIn, how many people are going and donating on that giving page? And so I think it's different for every person, right? Some people are in the stage where they are just wanting to build brand awareness. You might be a new organization or you're expanding as an organization and you just really need people to look in your direction. You just need people to know that you exist. And sometimes you need people to know that you exist and you're doing this thing that you would like them to be a part of. So it really just depends.
How much of it is like just having the words to say, here's what the story is, and how much is it the presentation and the delivery, like the mechanism of like how that actually comes out of your mouth or how it gets displayed?
Yeah, I think the structures matter more than the words, and that's hard for me to say. I'm an English major, I'm a writer. Words matter to me, right? But the structure really matters. With the way that the digital society has programmed us, you have such a short amount of time to make an impact. So those first couple of seconds really matter. So instead of starting, right, most nonprofit leaders and most business owners, they will start with the history of the organization, right? If I said, "Hey, Adam, have you heard about Brandworthy Solutions?" And you said, "No," I say, "Well, back in 1990, etc." And then you feel like you need to give all of these facts. In those first couple seconds, you need to hook that person that you're speaking to. Whether you're in front of that person, whether that person's reading, if they're scrolling through social media, you have to hook them in. And there's a couple of ways to do that. Some people are hooked by things that shock or surprise them. That can be a statistic. Like, hey, we raised $1 million in the last 24 hours, but we need a million more, right? Whatever that looks like. Or you can hook them by, there are visual cues, there are audio cues, there are so many different ways that you can engage people. I like to think of it, if you've ever been in a mall, which our malls are dying, which is so sad to me. But if you've ever been in a mall, there are stores in the mall and there are kiosks in the mall, right? If you're walking in that mall center, maybe you're a person that just goes to the mall and you just go to that one store and you leave. But if you walk through the mall, you're walking past all these different kiosks and people are going to try to reach out to you to get you to come to their booth to see what they have to sell and see what they have to offer. Some people approach this like a used car salesman and they're telling you the discounts, they're telling you what you can get, they're telling you, buy now. And some people approach it from a standpoint of here's what I have to offer you, right? And they approach that one client, they look you in the eye, they figure out what it is about their product that is going to be interesting and attractive to you, and they start there. And that's what more organizations need to do. They need to speak to one person, to talk directly to that person, and not say, all donors or anyone can help. No, you need to be speaking to me so that I know that right, the person who I'm reading this at this time, the person that you're in front of, knows how I can participate in what you're doing.
So not something that's vague or general, but something that really speaks to the person in a way that engages them, reaches
Yeah.
them. I'm curious about this. For context, a lot of the social entrepreneurs that I work with are early stage in the first kind of 1 to 3 years of business. It's like quite often they're like, Adam, I just need to post more on social media, but I don't have time. How do I record a video of myself? And it's like the concept of any sort of marketing is, oh, I just need to post more things to social media. What would you say to somebody who's in this stage? And what's maybe a good framework for them to get their grounding so that they're in the right place going forward?
Yeah, I think so. If you're just starting out, um, and I say this with caution because I don't want you to think you have to post on social media every day. In the beginning stages, you are going to want to post more so that you can have data to pull from. There's two extremes, right? There's people who are posting 5 times a day, and there's people who are afraid to post. They just consistently plan and they're not sure what to put out there, right? When you put out something, right? So if you get into the rhythm of, I will post every day for the next 2 weeks, one post on each platform every day for the next 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, most of those platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, wherever you are, will give you, right, a report. How many likes did you get? How many people viewed it, et cetera? Now you have data to pull from. Now you can see that, okay, you posted every day for 2 weeks, but the only thing that people really viewed, the only thing that got traction was this one video about this topic. Then you know, I need to make more content about that. You could even look, LinkedIn doesn't do this, but Instagram and TikTok does this. The time of day where most people viewed it. You can play around with when you post it. Maybe your people are online at 10 a.m., but by 6 p.m., they have logged off in a perfect world, right? People logging off social media. But you get to see kind of how your audience is responding, and that sort of shapes who your audience actually is. You might start to look through and go through those profiles and say, I thought I was posting to early stage entrepreneurs, but I see a lot of content creators in my likes and comments. I wonder why that is. I wonder if that maybe actually is my primary audience and not this audience that I thought it was. So when you in the beginning stage, when you put out a lot of information, then you have some data that you can kind of start to make decisions from. But if you're starting out, every organization needs at least three types of stories. There's the origin story. You have to tell people why the heck you exist. And you want to position this origin story kind of in a problem solution. Here's the problem that I was seeing, and here's how my company, is the solution. Here's what was going on in the world, and it really didn't address this thing, and here's what we did differently. Right? So that's your origin story.
Mm.
People love origin stories. You should post your origin story once every quarter because you're always going to have new people coming to your page and they won't know. You can pin it to your page, but this is a story that you will constantly tell. This is a story that starts your elevator pitch, or that should be on your website somewhere in the about us section or what have you. You need an origin story. Then you need an impact story. This is selling your unique value proposition, right? This is the why you matter. There's lots of nonprofit organizations in the world feeding the hungry. Why you? How do you do it differently? Why does this matter to you? And also, who are you serving? This is not always, and I say to nonprofits, this doesn't mean you need to go and give a gift card to a client to come and tell their story. You can tell their story in unique ways, right? And there's ways to ethically do that where you're not exploiting the people that you serve, but you're able to say, like, here's who we are and what we stand for. Here's how we do it differently. This is what is unique to us. The third story you need is an invitation story. Once people know who you are, once they know who you serve, they want to know or need to know how they can get involved. This is the what, right? Do you want me to give money? Do you want me to come and volunteer? Do you want me to call my senator? Do you want me to write letters? What's the thing that you are inviting people now to do? It doesn't always have to be money. Some organizations are, financially set and they really thrive on volunteers coming in and supporting. In fact, my son and I was doing community service at a local church pantry, and I had mentioned to them how I wanted to donate to the larger pantry here in our city, and they said, "Actually, we don't take donations. We are good on donations, but you can come and volunteer your time." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, people don't need food." They do, but that organization doesn't let you come and drop off your cans, right? They would rather you come and help them sort through things because they have the necessary inventory that they need. So you have to explain to people what you need from them and how they can help. And this is the story where you need to be the most specific, right? Don't just say, donate to us. That could mean a lot of different things. They may go and search for you on the internet and donate to an organization that has a similar name or something different. You need to be specific. You need to include that specific link. If there's a specific campaign you want them to donate to, then you need to say that specific campaign. If they need to write in the comments, this donation goes to low, whatever those specifics are, you need to drive them there directly. You need to be very explicit in explaining to them how to do that so that they do it correctly. So those are the things that I would say if you're just starting art, get your origin story, an impact story, and an invitation story.
And that seems like a great structure just for reflecting on the type of messages that are important for you to share with your audience so that they can understand who you are, what you're doing, and how they can get involved. And I love that point about being very clear on your asks. I noticed that I've done a lot of work with an organization in Columbus called the Star House, which is a drop in center for youth experiencing homelessness. And they get a ton of donations and they're always very specific. Here's what we need right now. Here's what we don't. Because people assume and they drop off things that end up
Hmm.
getting thrown out because they just don't have enough space for them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's true for any social impact, whether you're nonprofit, for profit, letting the community know, hey, here's what we need. And I like this point that you brought up earlier too, that when you're thinking about social media posting, that it's not like, hey, I have to have the perfect content every single day. It should be like I am testing my content and seeing what resonates with people. And so it's not just, oh, I'm going to put something together, put it up, and then I'm done and people will find out about me. That's great. But I'm putting out things consistently and then reviewing my metrics. So every week or however often sitting back and actually looking at what's performing well so that I can learn and adapt. But I heard having that consistency and some sort of tracking mechanism is really important to being able to build up your story and understand what's working.
I think the other thing too is when it comes to posting, this is true of emails as well. Every piece of content that you create and put out into the world should serve a purpose. So if you're stuck on what to post, you need to first think about why am I posting this? A lot of people get caught up on the posting because you feel like I don't have things to say. Well, why do you want to say something? What is it that you're wanting to say and why is this important for you to say? So, really understanding the purpose of every post. And then too, another layer of that is understanding how each platform that you're on functions. So if you're thinking about posting on LinkedIn, understand that, LinkedIn is about 50-50 as far as people reviewing posts on the app and reviewing posts on a desktop. So as you're including links, right, you have to link things differently on LinkedIn for people to see it. Videos are becoming more popular on LinkedIn. But if you posted a video to TikTok, you could likely post that to Instagram, but you may not post a video on LinkedIn. You might want to write out that story. So understanding the purpose of your post and then how, what performs well on each platform and the purpose of each platform makes a difference.
And broadly, like how should people be thinking about a purpose for a platform? Like if they're deciding, hey, should I go on Instagram or LinkedIn? Is there any approach of like where somebody should start based off of what they're doing?
It can vary. It depends on your comfort level with posting. If you are completely uncomfortable with making videos of any kind, I would say stay off of TikTok and Instagram. You need to be making videos there is because those are primarily visual platforms. If you enjoy writing, you enjoy telling stories in text format, LinkedIn and Threads would probably be the best platforms for you. Threads is growing like crazy right now. LinkedIn is really known for telling those contextual stories that, have a moral or a meaning. So if that is more of your comfort level, then I would say start there. Eventually, social media and brand building, it's all about trust, right? So the best ways to build trust are usually live and in person because people can see you, touch you, feel you, know that you actually exist, that you're not AI generated. So any type of video is going to perform well, of course, depending on the platform, because it's a live interaction. Photos are the second best. Text, audio, things like that tend to perform well because people can really start to build trust. As we're moving into a more AI dominated society, you being authentic and showing your actual self is going to help you to build trust more quickly.
Have you found anything that works for people who are new to recording video and they're scared? Like I found this myself when I started recording video. I was like, I hate this. I don't want to see myself on camera.
Yeah,
It feels so awkward. And I've noticed a lot of other people echoing the same thing. If it just feels really awkward recording yourself on camera.
yeah. So
What can people do?
I would say a couple of things. So one, like pre-plan out what you actually want to say. Write out, you don't have to write out word for word, but just write out different topics. Like, I would like to start with this story, then go to this, then go to that. I would say record yourself, get on a platform like we are on now, Riverside, Zoom, Google Meets, whatever. You can set up a camera in your house and pick one topic that you are just going to set a timer for yourself and just talk about. Just look at the camera and just talk. No interruptions. If you mess up, you stutter, you forget something, just start over and just talk. The more that you can do that, the more that you can become comfortable. I would say set a timer for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. What's great about that is there are lots of different tools that you can use to then take that video and it will make clips for you. You can make a 30-second, 60-second, 90-second clip of the good parts. If you want to go into a lot of editing, then you can go ahead and edit and then put it out there. But the more you get comfortable with practicing doing it by yourself, or if you want to, grab a friend, say, hey, hop on Zoom with me. I want to practice how to say this. I need to practice my origin story. Then you can do it that way as well. Um, Going live is great practice for that. Just going live, even for 5 minutes, just pressing live and going on and talking for a bit and just telling people who you are and what you have going on and logging off, right? That's great practice as well. I think the more that you can practice, the more comfortable that you become, and then it feels less scary.
All those are awesome ideas and feedback. And this is something that comes up a lot. So if you're listening and you're like, hey, I'm scared of recording videos, that's you. And my takeaway would be like, yeah, jump on Zoom or one of these other platforms and record yourself. And if it feels really uncomfortable, I love that idea of inviting a friend on, just so you have somebody to talk to until you get into a rhythm. But the other piece that you said, which I think is key, is like finding that consistency again of like, yeah, here's the 10 minutes when I'm going to show up and I'm going to do that, and just baking that into your routine so that you get that practice. This has been brilliant. I'm curious, like for the work that you're doing today, who's your ideal client and what questions should they be asking themselves when they come and find you?
Yeah. So I love working with nonprofit leaders, especially leaders who really have gotten comfortable leading from behind, who now feel the need or get a sense that they need to be more forward, that they need to be kind of out in front. They need to be building their personal brands on LinkedIn, or organizations who have not really been intentional about branding. And now you feel like maybe we need to rebrand or we need to tell a different story or do something different, or we haven't updated anything about our organization in X amount of years, right? Those are my people, so to speak. Yeah, if there's any confusion whatsoever about the story that you're telling, maybe you're hearing feedback from donors, clients, folks that you work with that they're unclear about what it is that you do or how you help people. That's a clear indicator. The moment someone says they're confused, that means that you're not being clear about something. If there's any kind of internal miscommunication, like I spoke about before, maybe this department doesn't know that this department does this thing, and so you're not really communicating a clear and cohesive message about your brand. If you are unsure if you have a brand or brand assets, that would be a good time to reach out to someone. Most organizations are clear on getting a mission out there. They've got their vision statement typed up. And then branding is kind of an afterthought where you're like, okay, we got a logo, our domain name is available, let's purchase it, and then you kind of move forward. But really thinking about your messaging, how you want to be able to position yourself in front of the right audience. That's another indication too. If you're not getting clients or sales have dropped significantly, donors are kind of disappearing, people aren't responding to your emails, you may have a branding or storytelling issue where you're not effectively communicating your needs, your value, and how people can join in on what you're doing.
That's great. And how do people find you?
Yeah, people find me a lot of different ways. I am on social media. My primary platform is LinkedIn. So, Brandy Nicole Walker on LinkedIn. You can also go to my website, youarebrandworthy.com. or you can find me on other platforms under Brandy Was Here.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today. That was really a fun journey. I mean, it was cool hearing about your life as a teacher and growing up with parents who are entrepreneurs and then getting out
Yeah.
and building your own thing just from your own discovery of seeing, hey, here's what works and here's what you love. And then building a company that's helping people craft their story and really get that message across so that they can get the support and connect with the clients and customers and people that they need to. And thanks for sharing the tips. That's fun diving into this age-old question of like, hey, how do I show up to social media? What should I be
Yeah.
doing? How do I get started? And I really love that idea of find something that's consistent where you're tracking it so that
Hmm.
you're getting practice and having some sort of feedback. It's a real pleasure to speak to you today. So thank
Yeah,
you
it's
so
nice
much for
speaking
going
with
through all
you
that.
too.
If you're listening, thanks for being here for another great episode of People Helping People. We'll dive into another concept in our next episode next week. Thanks so much for joining. Cheers.